We need money, Jono. The debt's burning us up.
Yeah, I don't know, Kev. Getting a job sounds like a bloody painful way to pay off these student loans.
True.
Hey, I've been thinking, maybe we can just react phenylacetone with, like, N-methylformamide, and then, hydrolyze it. Under acidic conditions, of course. Surely that's got to give us something worth something.
Good old Chem 3666 beats PHYS2113, eh?
Yeah, but the stuff about love and grunge was pretty cool, I hear the dude that taught that, the one with the totes rad video setup, well, he's making off video, and maybe we'll be in it, and then we'll be like rock stars, hey. Welcome to my making of PHYS2113 classical mechanics videos. Since I've been posting them on YouTube, I've had a few people send me emails asking, what software are you using for this? And I always have to reply to them that it's no single piece of software, and actually the setup that I'm using is rather complicated for it. If you haven't seen the videos, here's a couple of quick snippets. Yes, so ds is going to be square root of dx squared plus dy squared. And we pulled this stunt earlier. We can basically clean this up to pull out our dy. So we would have dx squared on dy squared plus 1 dy. And then, of course, this term here is just x of y dash squared plus 1 dy. Okay, so what I've really done here is taken the problem I did at the beginning of the lazy walker problem and now decided I'm actually interested in how y changes how x changes as a function of y rather than how y changes as a function of x, because I've got to account for a velocity that depends on y. So I'm just going to give you a quick look at the what I guess I'd call the campus roller coaster for University of Tokyo. It's a ride they call the Thunder Dolphin. I don't know where the name comes from. The initial drop is really cool. But the one nice feature is it's actually entangled into a building. And so what you'll notice as we come up over the top of this corner here is you go through a hole in the building wall. And so you can see that what I have in the setup there is basically one continuous video stream for the most part. It's got three elements. There's me talking to a virtual class. There's the slides that I would have on a screen, and then there's sort of a written component, which would normally in a lecture theatre I would do to a blackboard. I'm using three different pieces of software to record those three different streams all at once. So the stream to the virtual class is being recorded by Zoom. I'm using OneNote on an iPad recording system to do the written notes. And I'm using TechSmith's snagit on a PowerPoint display to get the slide feed for this, okay? So this video, what I'm going to do is I'll break it up into three different pieces. The first part, I'll talk a little bit about the sort of logistics and hardware setup that I use for achieving those videos. In the second part, what I'll do is I'll run through just especially the beginning of the recording process, how you get the setup, because if you don't get the setup right, it's really difficult to then compile the whole lot together into the final video product. And then in the third part, what I'll do is I'll walk through just a basic editing sequence for one of the simpler ones, maybe show a couple of the elements where I put some special features in, and then, if you want to do something really complex and action-packed, you can take it from there. Part one, hardware setup. I did all of the recordings from home, and I did them all from home for two reasons. The first and most obvious one is that in a coronavirus lockdown you have to work from home. But the other one behind it is basically the setup that I have for doing this at home is a little bit better than the setup that I'd have in the office for doing this. And there's a number of elements that I sort of bring to the package as my own things that you would not normally find in a traditional academic office. So let me walk through them one by one from sort of most obvious down. So the most obvious is probably the thing on my left here, which is a green screen. Most people think that green screen setups are quite expensive and complicated. I kind of hate doing that. I've always been a big fan of just trying to be creative and resourceful and find some cheap way to achieve it. And the main reason why I want a green screen is because I'm using Zoom to record my virtual classroom interaction. And the nice thing about Zoom is it can clean up your background. And so rather than having to show, bits of my house in the background, what I can do is basically put any background I want. And if you do that using just the standard background settings in Zoom, what it tends to do is cut off your head and things look funny and move around weirdly because of the algorithm that's involved in trying to work out what's background and what's you. And if you have a green screen, that's really easy because anything that's green is background and anything that's not green is clearly useful stuff to go in the video. So my green screen is basically just a very bright green bedding package, and so I bought it half to use for work and half to use for home. I'm one of those people who's in the Scandinavian habit of sort of doona covers, so if I buy a sheet set, the sort of non-fitted sheet never really gets used very much. And so what I did was bought myself a brand new sheet set. The fitted sheet and the pillow are on the bed. The non-fitted sheet is my green screen, and I bought a spare pillowcase for it, carved it up, and that covers a little bit that the green screen doesn't quite get. It's basically just running on a wooden dowel that I picked up from a hardware store, and when I don't need it, I can take it down and pack it away. When I want it, I just pull it out, hang it up, and there we go. We've got a green screen background, and I run really nice backgrounds in the background. Ultimately, it cost me around about $40 to $50 by the time I bought the sheets plus the delivery, and essentially very low cost solution to getting really good clean backgrounds. Okay, so moving from there to the rest of the setup, I'm recording 3 separate streams at once, and to record 3 separate streams at once, obviously you're going to want a lot of screens. Those people who know me from work will know that I have 3 screens there as well. And just as a quick aside, I'm really fond fan of sort of portrait mode monitors. So both home and office, I run a pair of portrait mode monitors and a third monitor off to the side. My 2 portrait modes are really nice because, if, for example, imagine you're writing a paper and you want to keep, some other paper up in the background so that you can look at what you're reading at the same time as you're trying to write something. Or you might be cutting and pasting between 2 documents, or you might be, working on something into an email and you want to have something else up. It's really useful. And if you're doing lots of stuff with writing, then portrait mode is actually really useful compared to landscape mode. And then the third monitor I have is usually just there as a landscape substitute when I have to do things that are a bit wider. It's a handy third screen for things like, keeping a calendar up or something like that. And those who know that know me will know I have an insatiable appetite for music, so often that third monitor has got Spotify on there, and that's my way of keeping my playlist going. So let's walk through this one by one. My monitor on the left is running Zoom. So my virtual recording, I'm basically having a Zoom meeting with myself, so there's no one else in it. I'm recording that Zoom meeting, and when I finish the Zoom meeting, I'll pop that video out, and that video is then the sort of to the class content for my video stream. My second portrait monitor, it's a little obscured by the microphone, but I'm always running slideshow version of PowerPoint there, so it has my slides on it. And what I have is Snagit running in the background, recording a video stream off those PowerPoint slides, and so I use that as well. And then My third stream in here is coming from my iPad down here. I'm doing that with OneNote, and I'm basically using the feature in iPad where you get it to record what's happening on the screen as a way of doing the recording. So I've got 3 separate video streams, and I've got 3 separate audio streams, and those 3 separate audio streams are kind of important because each of them carries a little piece of what's going on. Everything I'm saying is coming off the Zoom audio stream. The audio stream from Snagit is bringing in anything that's audio in my slides. And so usually when I've got slides, I'm using them either for really important key points, really important equations, mostly for photos and sometimes for video. And so if I'm running video, the video soundtrack is usually coming in through that stream. And then I've got on my iPad a little bit of a redundant stream for everything else, just so if there's something I need to pull out, I can have it. And also I need 3 audio streams because I need some way to synchronize all of the tracks. And I'll talk about exactly how to do the synchronization in the second part. But basically I'm using a click on all 3 that allows me to just bring them all together at the end and get everything together. My third monitor, I'm using the really nice feature that you have in PowerPoint of being able to see sort of what slide comes next and what slide you're on and aspects of the slideshow. So, you know, like the clock, so I know how long I've been running for, stuff like that. And so when I'm recording, basically I'll be set up. I can see myself on the left screen. That's kind of useful just for tracking where I am, and so, you know, if I need to wave something around, I'm not reaching way out of the screen. It also gives you a bit of sort of visual feedback. One of the things that's difficult sometimes when you're recording for, you know, direct to camera is there's this feeling of no feedback. It's like talking to an empty room. And so here I'm basically just talking to a student, and that student is me. So that kind of helps that a little bit. I've got my slides up, so I know whatever's going on the slides. I have my notes off to the side. I've got what's being written down in front of me on my iPad, and if I need to know what's coming next, I can just kick my eyes over quickly and see what the next slide is to come up. All right, some other key things in the setup. Camera, running a Logitech camera. It's the C920, I think, although the models change all the time. You want a reasonably good camera so you can get good resolution video, because by the time you compress it down and so forth, you want something that doesn't look too grainy and ugly. It's got a pair of stereo speakers on the side of it. They're nice, but I don't actually use them in the end. I'm running a Blue Yeti microphone. It's a USB mic, it's semi-professional cardioid mic. The sound quality that comes from it is really, really nice as long as you use it properly. A lot of people think that for a microphone like this, what you actually want to do is talk into the end of it. That's a completely incorrect way of using it. What you're actually doing is talking into it from the side. And so I partly obscure my screen in this setup just so that I can get the microphone in the right place. I've got a little bit of a foam pop filter on the front just to get rid of the sort of acoustic jump that you get when you say things like P's and B's. I've got it standing on a little foam stand just to acoustically decouple it from the table a little bit. Audio is probably the biggest thing that you want to get right when you're doing this kind of recording. The 2 big distractors that happen when you're making this kind of video is, one, that the video resolution is either very low or the frame rate's very low, and so you have this really horrible to look at video, particularly if you're looking at on a larger screen. Some people will watch YouTube on televisions, and if you're putting your videos up as, you know, some low resolution format like 360p, then it's just going to look horribly grainy and no one's going to want to watch it, right? So make sure you're running good cameras, make sure you're doing output on video side to good resolution. But the bigger distractor than that is sound. If your sound is clunky, if it sounds like you're a million miles away, if there's heaps of acoustic noise in there, it's just not very good to listen to. And I would say for me, that was probably my biggest struggle in the first few weeks of doing this. I started out using not so good microphones, and basically very quickly found my way becoming a sort of a microphone nerd, trying to sort of get the audio right. There's some engineering you can do later on after recordings to fix that up even more, and I'll talk about that later. But basically, make sure you have a good microphone, make sure you're using it well. There's nothing worse in those videos than bad sounds, lots of noise in the background, people can't hear what's going on. It's very much worth putting effort into. Looking around, I think I've pretty much covered everything in this. Probably the only other thing I'd add in this is that you kind of want to be a little bit careful about acoustic noise feeding in from mechanical contact, so bumping the table, or sometimes when you're writing with a stylus on your iPad, you get sort of that clicky noise coming through. It's the main reason why I have sort of my microphone on a foam mount. In an ideal world, I'd have it from some arm hanging down from a spring-loaded thing like they have in the radio studios, but that was going to be a bit troublesome to arrange. The other thing that I can very quickly think of is camera placement. It's the one thing that I still don't really like about my setup. I've got the camera on the top of the monitors, which is a natural place to put it. Most cameras are designed to go up there. But the problem I have is that essentially a lot of the time I'm working down on my iPad down here. And so what the camera's actually looking at is sort of top of my forehead. In an ideal world, I'd probably put the camera down here somewhere. It's just not very easy to do, and it kind of looks weird if I'm coming to look back up to the screen because everyone's looking up from below. So in an ideal world, I'd probably have the camera in the same place as the microphone, and maybe even almost just build the microphone and the camera into one package would be really ideal for this. Okay, so that's pretty much everything for the hardware. And now what we'll do is we'll switch over a little bit and I'll show you how to just the process of setting up the recording and getting going, and we'll go from there. Okay, part two. Let me just recap where we are from part one. Left-hand monitor, I've opened Zoom, I've joined a meeting that I'm the only one in, and I've started recording simply because this is the part of the stream that you're seeing right now. On my second right-hand portrait monitor, I've opened the PowerPoint lecture that I want to use. I've put it in slideshow mode, and the slides are on this monitor, and the control system for PowerPoint slideshows is on my third monitor. And then I've got my iPad set up. I've opened OneNote because that's where I do the notes in. Made a new page, given it a title, making PHYS2113, and it's ready to go. Okay. So this is where I'd normally be sort of at the start of everything, and because there's a complicated process of setting this up and running, I like to run checklists. I got in the habit of checklists very early. I learned to fly planes when I was in my teens. I then went to university and started working with very complex experimental equipment where if you got the things in the wrong order, bad things would happen, so I got into checklists there. And I really like them for anything that's got a really high risk of messing things up. So what I'm going to do is work through my checklist to set this up. Step 0 is email and other distractors off. My iPhone is ringer off, in do not disturb mode, and I've stuffed it down the side of the sofa so I'm not even tempted to look at it. On my computer, email is closed and off. Anything that likes to put pop-ups on your screen is gone as well, so Slack, Teams is really bad for that. Discord, all those things, absolutely turned off. I don't want anything distracting me while I'm in the middle of doing this process or popping up in funny places. My iPad is in Do Not Disturb mode as well, and there's one other thing that I've done on it. If you go into the general settings under display and brightness, there's a setting called Auto Lock. It's the thing that makes it go to sleep when you're not looking at it. You need to set that to never. Basically, you want your iPad continuously running the entire time, and the main reason for that is that if you're doing screen recording on an iPad and it goes into auto lock mode, that screen recording will turn off, right? And so the risk that you have here is if you're in the middle of long talking about this and your iPad goes to sleep, this will be recording, this will be recording, that recording will cut out, and you won't be able to put the streams together, and you'll have to start again from scratch, okay? So definitely need to make sure that's in never. Okay. Step 1, open Zoom, start a meeting, come in and get your audio and background settings right. So let me do background first. The Those of you who've seen my lectures will know that I like to run a different background in each of the lectures so that I can sort of, have something interesting to talk about and a little bit of a change of scenery. If you're running in here, you basically want to have your green screen setting switched on. That stops it from doing sort of the painful background clipping thing. And you can set the exact color. Basically, if you pick that little box there, it will show you your background. You pick a color in the middle, make sure it comes out nice, okay? And so you can see the background there. There's a little bit of a black thing in here, and that's just my camera sitting in front of the green screen grabbing this shot that you see. Okay. One thing to be aware of with a green screen is you want to avoid green in your clothing. So I've deliberately done this. You see the green bits in my Something for Kate t-shirt here are kind of transparent and see-through. And, if I have a prop in my lecture and it's a sort of greenish sort of color, it can become invisible at points as well. So you want to try to avoid green things when you're dealing with a green screen unless you're deliberately trying to be entertaining. The other thing I like to set up is the sound settings, and Zoom has actually done a really good job of making these better for this sort of application in the last 6 months or so. If you've got a nice quiet environment and a good microphone, then you can turn your suppressed background noise setting down to low. Normally it would be on auto, set it on low. And I also like to get into the advanced settings and in particular switch on this enable original sound from the microphone. What it does is it basically turns off most of the Zoom algorithms that sort of try to massage your sound for making meetings work well. Things like noise suppression and high-pass filtering and gain control and stuff like that are turned off so that you get a nice stable signal out of your microphone that you can work with later, okay? There's 2 new features in here. These weren't around when I recorded my lectures. Some of you will know that I like to record sort of music using Zoom. I usually have these switched on for that, high fidelity music mode and stereo audio. If you're recording lectures, you may not need those. You can turn them off. It's entirely up to you. Okay, so that's that up, set and running. I often will start the recording and then pause it. And just basically so I don't get too far through the video before I actually start having meaningful content. But I won't do that today because this stream is actually part of the video you're watching right now, and if I pause it, then everything will go out of sync, okay? And you'll notice up in the top corner here, you can see there's a turn off, turn on original sound switch. I usually have that in turn on original sound, so I'm actually just getting on the track what's really coming through that microphone without too much filtering in it. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2 is to basically get the slides up in display mode. And what I then like to do is, why is it not responding? Come on. Okay, go into show taskbar. I bring up snagit, and so you can see snagit up here. Okay, so you want it in video mode. There's a few different tabs down here on the left-hand side. You want selection to be region because what you basically want to clip is just the area of your slide that you use in your video later on. Share is none. Webcam needs to be off because otherwise Zoom will get in a fight with Snagit over who's got control of your webcam, and it never ends well. These 2 settings up at the top, never really played with. Capture cursor should be on because it basically tells you where the edges are. Record microphone, I always have off, same reason. Zoom's got the microphone. If Snagit's trying to grab the microphone, I end up with a war that is never good. And I have record system audio turned on, basically because I want the stream that's connected to Snagit to either have anything that's a soundtrack for a video that's in my PowerPoint, and I also need it there for when I do synchronization, which I'll talk about in a few moments, okay? Once you got that set up, you can just do capture. It will bring up your little cursor up here. I basically take it from the top right corner to the bottom, top left corner to the bottom right corner of my slide. Click it, it will initialize. There's a little recording button that you probably can't see down here because it's behind the microphone. Click that little recording button. It will count you in, 3, 2, 1, and then it will start recording, okay? And so now it's just recording anything that's inside this orange rectangle when you're going, okay? And again, sometimes when I'm in the setup phase, I might pause this while I set other things up and then restart it right before the end, okay? I won't do that now just to keep things nice and simple. The last one is to set up recording on the iPad. So the checklist runs like have one node up and ready to go, have it in full screen so that it's pretty much ready to write and taking up most of the screen. And then you want do not disturb on, auto lock off, and then you want to start recording. So if you go into the top right corner and just drag down, it will bring up the sort of control menu. And in the bottom left-hand corner of the control menu, there'll be a little icon. It's a little white circle with a little white ring around it. That is the screen recording button. You can just press it, and all it will record is the video and not the audio track. If you want the audio track, what you have to do is actually hold that button down, and it will bring you up a separate menu. When you bring up that separate menu, at the bottom it will have something that's got microphone off. It'll be a little grey button. If you press it, it will go to red and tell you that the microphone's on. Then you press start recording, and it will count you in 3, 2, 1, start recording. And then if you go back to your main window, you're ready to record, okay? At that point, what I would do is unpause my snagit, unpause my Zoom, and do a quick final check that everything is recording, right? This one's really important because if you drop a stream, you're going to end an hour later in tears. I've done it more than once where I've had to go back and re-record a whole hour because one of the streams got broken. So recording on up in the Zoom here, recording on in Snagit. You can see it counting how long it's been recording. I've got a little recording logo in my iPad down here ready to go. So that's 1, 2, 3 streams all ready to go. Synchronization I actually do most easily by sound. And so the way I do it is I come down into sort of the bottom right hand corner of my screen down here and bring up the speaker settings, and you'll notice that I've got a Bluetooth speaker, and if I click on the little bar, it will give me a ping noise like that. That now turns up in all 3 of the streams. The microphone running Zoom hears that, the iPad recording sound hears that, and because it's generated by the computer system audio, it's in the Snagit track as well. It's something that happened that's simultaneous, that's now on all 3 tracks. And so when I come in later and build them together in part 3, I can use that sound to basically synchronize all the tracks and make sure they all run in sync. Okay, so it's a really important thing to do. And I usually do it with a little bit of silence, make the ping, a little bit of silence after, so it's a really clear thing in the audio track that you can see. So let me just do this. Like that. And then what I would do at this point normally is take my Bluetooth speaker and set it to mute, because from here onwards I only want system audio sounds to turn up in the Snagit track. I don't want them turning up on either of my microphones, otherwise things get complicated when I have to do the sound later on. Okay, so that's the only point that my speaker is ever on in the whole thing, is just to do that ping. Then I'm pretty much ready to go. I'd usually pop up into slideshow. If I haven't got it in pointer mode, I'd switch it into pointer mode. All 3 screens are recording, and now I can pretty much start. Usually when I start talking, I do a clap. I want something I can see in the audio track to work out where to cut, so something like that. Usually with a little bit of silent space on either side so it sticks out as an obvious, very loud peak. It's really good for zoning in on sections when you do the video later on. If I mess it up, I say something stupid, or I lose my train of thought, or I make a really grievous error in it, what I do is usually just go silent for a few seconds and then leave everything recording because it's all set up and good, put a clap in the track, and then just start again. Okay, and later on I can come through and look for those claps and work out where I've just got to chop bits out that are wrong. Okay, so ultimately I might record a 1-hour lecture, and the final thing might be an hour and 20 minutes with a few bits where I've just stopped and gone, no, that was terrible. Now I'll redo it again and have a better version of it. Okay. So now I do the whole hour. I might cut it into 2 pieces. So if I wanted to take a break in the middle, I just leave it recording and go upstairs and do whatever. If you pause any of the tracks, you break synchronization, right? So once you start running, you really need to keep running. And then to finish off at the end, it's really easy. Once you're done, you're done. You just need to turn off all 3 of the recording streams. Once you do that, the iPad stream will save into photos. I then use my USB-C connection to my computer to basically pull that huge, and it's huge, it's a couple of gigabytes of like 1 hour long video from my iPad onto my computer. When I stop Snagit, Snagit will bring up Snagit Editor and allow me to, let me just walk through and do these right now. So I can stop recording on my iPad. It will do that automatically in the background. Put that in photos. Sometimes you have to wait a few minutes for that to happen before you can take that off. I won't show you doing that because it takes a little while. If I stop my Snagit stream, it will do processing video, and then it will bring up the editor at the top. And then all I do is just click share file and save that as a file name. It'll come out as an MP4, just drop that on the desktop. So that will now be my slides. And then the last step, and I won't do it until I'm ready to finish, would be to stop recording on Zoom. It will then say that that's the end of the file. If I want to start another recording, I could keep going. Or once I end the meeting, what it will do is it will start processing the video files from the meeting. It will ask me for a folder to put them on the computer later on, and then I'll have those as there as MP4s as well, right? And so once I've got the MP4 off the iPad, the one off Snagit, the one off Zoom, I name them, Lecture 8 presentation, Lecture 8 slides, Lecture 8 iPad, or whatever you want to call them, have them all ready to go. Then we're set up for part 3 of the process. All right, part 3. So this is the bit where we take the 3 streams that we just recorded and we build them together into one single video file, and ultimately that's the thing that we upload to YouTube as our final video. What you'll be able to see at the moment is part of my screen where I'm running Adobe Premiere Pro. I use that program for 2 reasons. One is that we have a campus license, which means I get to use it for free. The other is that I actually really like it, and I'd probably use it even if I had to pay for it. There's other options. Camtasia is a good one, but the nice thing about Premiere Pro is it's easy, it's efficient. The tutorial setup is actually pretty good in terms of training you how to use it for the first time. And once you get the hang of using it, it's very, very quick and powerful. So let me start just by walking you through how it works and what it looks like. There's a little project box down here in the bottom left corner on my screen. How it assembles depends on your monitor, so these might be in slightly different places. To speed things up, I've actually imported all the files already. That import process is pretty simple. You take the videos that are on your desktop. I always do everything on the desktop. Drag and drop them into that box. They'll automatically import and do anything that's needed in terms of processing so they turn up. And so what we have in here is my video stream from Zoom, my PowerPoint slides, my OneNote off the iPad, a PNG or JPEG file for the cover slide, which I'll show you later. And I've added 2 other videos in there so that at the end I can show you how to do sort of interspersed videos and voiceovers and little tricks like that, okay? There's a timeline box, and when you first start, it's got nothing in it. Drop media here to create sequence, so I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. There's a big program box up here, which is where you basically get to look at what you're doing in terms of your video while you're editing it. And then there's a big set of effects down here, which we'll use when we build things up, okay? So before I start putting together the video, I'll just point to the one difference that you'll probably notice at the moment, which is I'm wearing a pair of headphones. If you want to do this process just using a speaker, it's probably okay for most of the editing that you'll do. I run headphones for 2 reasons. One is if I'm doing voiceovers, I don't want the soundtrack that's playing that I'm voicing over to turn up on my microphone. And so if I run it off a speaker, I'll get a copy on the microphone, and at best I'll have two copies over the top of each other. At worst, they'll be slightly offset and I'll get a sort of weird echo sounding thing. If they're running through headphones, it's silent. I usually turn it down quite a bit because the Blue Yeti microphone is really sensitive and actually can hear through the headphones sometimes, which is a bit frustrating, but there's not much you can do about that. Sometimes turning the gain down helps. And the other reason why I like headphones is that I'm kind of a bit more in the sound. This is the point where I do a little bit of engineering on the audio, and if you're listening to it on a speaker, it's not quite the same as listening to it with headphones on. You can sort of hear the nuance and sound a little bit. It's probably perfectly okay just to plug your headphones straight into your laptop. Just so people know what my setup is, I'm actually running through a Behringer Xenix Q502 USB mixer. That's going to sound more expensive and sophisticated than it really is. All it is a little box about yay big. It has a number of audio channels come in that you can mix just like a standard mixer. And you can pick them up for about $120 at JB Hi-Fi. I have one simply because, you know, I like it when I'm making music. If I have friends over who want to record a track, you can plug a guitar and a bass in and record those as separate tracks. It's kind of handy thing to have. And then very, very strongly advise a good set of headphones for this. I use Audio-Technica M40Xs. But as long as it's good closed ear set connected by a cable, so you've got low latency, it pretty much does the job quite well. And I'll have these on all the way through because it just makes my job easier, particularly when I get to the voiceover section. Okay, so what we need to do is start dropping our videos in to start creating a timeline. And the important thing is the choice of the first video. And the choice of the first video sets the aspect ratio for the screen that your video will go to. I usually make that my zoom video for two reasons. One is the aspect ratio that I record the zoom in is pretty much what I want to use for YouTube anyway. And it's kind of set by my camera, so it's nice. The other is that the audio track has 95% of the audio for the video anyway, so it makes sense for it to be audio track number one. Okay, so let's do that. Drag and drop this in, and you'll see in here in a second, maybe it didn't drop properly. Let's just try that again. There we go. You'll now have an actual timeline in here, and you'll have a little black box up here in your program, which is basically now set by the aspect ratio of the video. Okay. So we have a number of video channels, V1, V2, V3. We've got a number of audio channels, A1, A2, A3, A4. You can change the number of those in software. You can have a whole pile of them. You can have less of them. I usually run with 3 video, 4 audio, because that's most I need to run with at the moment. You can see a bar for the video in here. It's pretty nondescript, blue little bar. And you can see the audio, and the nice thing is it shows the intensity plot for the sound, and it makes it a really useful way to be able to navigate through that video as you work your way through. Okay, so now that we've dropped the first one in, we can drop the other 2 videos in. So let's take our PowerPoint slides and put them in video 2, and then let's take our OneNote and put it in as video 3. You'll notice that the screen has just changed. And what I've actually got at the moment is all 3 videos overlaid on top of each other. But the thing to realize is often the first frame for a video is just black. So the smart thing to do here is actually to bring the cursor forward a bit so that all your frames will be in actual vision. And now what we need to do is shrink them down so that we can see them all and then set them to the size we want for the video. Okay, so let's do that. We can come in here, double click this. This is my OneNote sitting on the top. I can bring this down. You can see this little rectangle in here. I can shrink it and just put it off to the side here. Here's my PowerPoint slide now. I can shrink that down and move that down out of the corner. And then you'll notice here's my video. It's got the same aspect ratio as the frame setting, which makes sense because it's video number 1. And so I can take it to and shrink it down so we've got that ready to go. So you'll remember from part 1 what my layout looks like. I've got the notes on the right at full size with the video sitting on top of the slides. So let's just go in and set the sizes for this. I usually try to make this big enough so that the menu for it falls out the top of the page. Because you don't really need to see that menu, so I've got something a little bit like that. And then I basically just adjust the PowerPoint and the video so that they're about equivalent width and sitting one on top of the other. Okay. That's probably a little wider than the slides are, so let's bring that in a tiny bit. Let's bring that up a tiny bit. Once you've set this, it runs through the whole video, which is kind of nice. You don't really have to go through and adjust it anymore once you've got it done the first time. So I usually like to get it right and then just not muck around with it very much. Just bring that there. And the other thing that's nice is just to try and get the balance left and right of the midline of the screen right, so it looks kind of nicely laid out. Okay, it's worth taking a few seconds just to do this bit of the job right. Okay, I won't perfect it. It'd probably take me a little bit longer, but that's good enough for now. Okay, and so you'll see if I just scroll my scroll bar here that now I can work my way through the lecture, and you can see that those three things change independently and they're all visible on the screen all at once. Okay, all right. If I was to press play at the moment, I would be in different parts of the sequence of what I recorded in the different windows, because I'll have started one recording and then started another recording and then started another recording, and at the moment they're all just aligned against each other. So this one will be a bit ahead of this one, will be a bit ahead of this one. So the first step in this whole process is basically just to synchronize all the tracks together, okay? And as you remember from part 2, we do that by making an audio ping on the speaker that then turns up on all the tracks and allows us to find a synchronous event that we can align them all to, okay? That process is actually pretty easy, and once you've done it a few times, you can almost do it visually. You don't even have to listen to the tracks anymore to find where this is turning up. So let's zoom in here. I can already see them. It's there, there, and there. And that's just because I've been doing this for months and I know exactly what I'm looking for. But let me walk you through how you would do this if you're doing it. And what I'll do also is just align these up. So that's what it would look like when I first started. Okay. So the nice thing I can do here is I can mute individual tracks in here. So I'm going to mute track 2 and track 3 and just listen to track 1. And what I'm going to do is go looking for that audio ping, okay? And I know where it is. It's right there. So let's zoom in on it. You can see it's a nice long peak in here. Let me just play so I can convince you that it's what it is. Like so. And so what you do is you go and sit right on that edge, and you can put a marker on it. So this little thing up the top here is a marker. I've got to choose that track, press the little marker button, and you'll see that there's a little green marker now that's on that little ping in there. Okay, so that's the first one. I can zoom back out, and now what I'm going to do is do that for the other 2 tracks. Okay, so I can mute the first one, unmute the second one, and go looking for the ping on the second. I know it's just there, so zoom in on that. Let's find the edge of it. It's just there. So just choose the track, put a marker on it, mute 2, turn 3 on, zoom back out again, and there it is, just there. Okay, so it's out here somewhere. So let's just zoom in on that position. That's interesting. Oh yeah, there it is. Right, okay. So I can select that track, put a marker on it, and then zoom back out, okay? And so you can see, if you look in here, that the green markers in each of the videos are slightly misaligned, which just tells you that the tracks are not synchronized as they're turning up on here, okay? So the next step in the process here is to align all of those markers, and I can just drag them out to the point where the furthest marker is out, okay? So let's take track 2 here and slide it out so that the markers align. Take track 1 here and slide it out so that the markers align. I went a bit too far there. That's it. Perfect. Right. And so let's just back this up a little bit. Unmute all the channels. And so what I should hear is not ping, 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 but I should hear just ping on all of the channels all at once. Okay, so let's just play this through and check that it synchronizes. There we go. And so now the whole video sequence is aligned from front to back, synchronized so that they all play together nicely, right? When I speak, my speaking lines up with the writing that happens on the slide. There's none of these sort of funny offsets. Okay, so with that done, there's usually a whole pile of sort of stuff that's recorded at the start of the video before you actually get into the real part of the of what you want to present. So what we now need to do is go and find the beginning of the video. You'll notice these nice big spikes in here, and those big spikes in there are just clap marks. So if I play here, that's basically just me marking in the track, and it's nice because I can use that audio track to tell me where those things are, right? You notice that there's another clap just out here, and actually this video, the start of it, I forgot to clap before the last one I did. It's actually out here somewhere. So sometimes you can see long silences that will tell you, especially if you're really disciplined about when you want to make a break, just shutting up for a few seconds. It gives you a place to look for in your sequence. So let's just bring the cursor out here and check that's the start of the video.
We're at lecture 8 and almost halfway through the course.
Okay, so that definitely is a beginning. And if I zoom out, you can see here, that's sort of the last silence before I talk for some significant length of time. And if I scan forward here, you can see I go to slide 2, I go to slide 3, and so forth. I'm well and truly getting through the lecture, okay? So what we can do here is just choose a position where we want to start. And usually you want to do that just a few fractions of a second before you start talking, so that you've kind of got a little bit of space to put some transition in. And so if you then zoom out at that point, all the way back to here, what we can do is just pull the start of the video back to where that cursor is. So you'll notice that there's, when my cursor goes over the end here, it turns into like a little red bracket. I can grab that and bring that up to my cursor position. And I can do that for all 3 of those videos. Tracks in there, like so. And then that's basically just the start of my video, right? So if I go back a few seconds, I'm in black space.
We're at lecture 8 now.
And we're good, okay? So there's the start. I've now got a really convenient gap at the beginning where I can put a cover slide, because you don't really just want to come into a video like this. So now what we can do is drop in the cover slide figure, which in this case is a PNG format. So we can drag that in and drop it. It will come up as pink because it's not video. And if I take my cursor back there to where that is and zoom in on it, you can actually see it has some length. I think the default in the software is to make it a 5-second thing. I actually usually like to have them up for about 4 seconds or so. It's long enough that you can see what's on it, without it being there so long that it gets boring. And you'll notice that it's got a different aspect ratio to the video window, so I need to just pop in here for a second and just shrink it down so it actually fits in the window properly, like so. Okay, so there we go, we've got that. And then what we're going to want to do is just basically butt the video up against that. So if I zoom back out here, I can pick up my sequence of video and just start dragging it back towards it. And just dock it onto the end right there, okay? And you'll notice in here that if I put my cursor in here, I've actually got quite a bit of silence before I get talking. So where I probably want to start is just there. So now I can just retrim this a little bit to there and then butt that on. And if I go back to the start and have a look, I should actually have a really good entry into this now.
We're at lecture 8 and almost half.
Like so. Okay. So that brings me to transitions. What you often want to do is not have sort of really crunchy transitions in a video. And there's ways to put transitions, there's a whole pile of them in software. I highly recommend being kind of disciplined about it. People put in all sorts of funky fades and weird things, and it's just a bit too much. I try to keep them simple, and I use nothing other than just an exponential fade on the audio, something that sort of just brings the sound in cleanly. And I tend to use cross dissolves on the video just so that you go from black to there without just being boom like that, okay? So these are in your effects menu. If you open audio transitions and crossfade, there's one called exponential fade. And I basically just put that on the Zoom track. And then audio 2, which is coming from the slides, is 95% empty unless there's audio in a video. Okay, so I leave that turned on and just let it go. Never bother fading because it's usually quiet. And then audio 3 is the redundant stream from the iPad. And it's basically the same thing that's in the Zoom audio, just with more noise. So I usually mute that channel all the way through my whole video so I don't have to listen to it. Okay, I basically just have it there so I can synchronize the writing with the other parts of the sequence. Okay, your video transitions, you got a lot of them. I ignore all of them except for cross dissolve, and you can just drop cross dissolve in. You can either drop it on a side of the transition or you can drop it across. I usually like to drop it on the side rather than across them. But you can play with that yourself. It's, you know, it's one of these things you can have some fun with. And so now if we go back and just watch this transition again.
We're at lecture 8 and almost halfway through the course now.
You'll notice that it comes in quite nicely, right? If I had heaps of time, I might actually just go back and undo it and just add a little bit of extra silence at the beginning just so that the exponential doesn't cut off the talking. But I won't do that now because it'll labor the point on the video. Okay, so there's the front end, all nice and ready to go. And so the next step in here would basically be to cut further down the line. This is usually the point where I do the audio engineering. And the main reason for that is that if you do the audio engineering now, it propagates through the entire track. And if you make a cut, the engineering you do on the front side of the cut holds for the back side of the cut as well. If you don't do it now, you cut into individual pieces, you have to apply the audio engineering to the individual pieces. And so it's a lot more work to do it later, right? So I usually do it now before I start cutting things up. And there's only really 2 things that I do. I spend a lot of time playing around with various different effects and all sorts of things. And I encourage you to do it yourself. It depends on your setup as to what really works. In the end, I settled on basically 2 things that I wanted to do. The first one that I run is, let's just open audio effects up here, is to run a compressor. For those who haven't done much audio, the best way to describe a compressor is basically what it does is it takes loud noises and damps them down, and it takes quiet noises and amplifies them so that the sort of average power across the entire track becomes more constant, okay? It sort of kills out the loud stuff and boosts the quiet stuff so that everything is at an acceptable level. I usually use the multi-band compressor in here. It's the nicest of the set, and the way you apply it is basically you just pick it up and drop it onto your track, and away you go, okay? I've got them all selected at the moment, and I only want to apply it to the Zoom audio because that's the only one that really matters. So let's just drag and drop that there. And you'll notice that the little grey box at the start of the audio is now turned purple, and that purple basically tells you that there's now some processing done on that part of the track, okay? So if we right-click that little purple box, go down to multi-band compressor, set it to output gain, it's now turned on, and so we can just edit that current effect. It will bring up a little window here, okay? Often, I won't do it now because it's too much noise to talk over, but often when I'm doing it without recording a video at the same time, I will have the video playing so I can listen to the change that's coming in when I put the audio effects in, okay? My favorite preset for this is the one called Kill the Harshness. I pretty much always use that. And then I back off the output gain by about 3 or 4 dB just to keep things nice and contained in here. Okay, so then you can just close this little window. And if we play it...
it's getting a bit busy.
I'll let you play with it yourself. You can hear the difference between when it's off and when it's on. Okay. The other thing that I like to run in here is under filter and EQ. And what I basically do is put a graphic equalizer on. So now instead of sort of trying to equalize out the loudness, which is what a compressor does, what I'm trying to do is equalize out the frequency spectrum. Pick up the lows, pick up the highs, pick up the mids, pull out some of the noisy bands in the spectrum. So pull this in, drop it. Same deal. You want to put it on master gain, so it's switched on. Edit that current effect. And at the moment, you can see it's a completely flat band EQ. And for videos of lectures, I actually like to use destination home theater. If I'm doing music, I'm usually using one of the other ones because the home theater setting doesn't work very well for music. If you choose that preset, it will go through and set your table. And so you can see here you're boosting your lows, boosting your mids, and boosting your highs, and clipping out some of the bands where it's a little bit funny. Okay, so close that up, and then we can play that.
So I've had to recruit.
And if you go through and have a listen, you'll see that those three sounds are very slightly different. Okay, and that's all the audio I usually do for the entire track in here. Now, you kind of want to stay disciplined. You can over-engineer the thing and it just sounds not so great. Okay, so then we've got the front working. The only other thing to do is to do the end, okay? And so I would either, if it was one single video, just basically clip off the end in a common place and make sure it's got a nice ending. I tend to record two videos back to back with a gap in the middle. So what I'm going to do here is throw away the second half, make the first bit. Then I'd come back and just throw away the first half and make the second bit, okay? So you can kind of see it in the audio here. There's a quiet patch down here. So that is probably the end of the first lecture. So let's just pop in here and zoom in. And just have a listen in before it goes silent and just see where we're at.
I'm going to deal with the one overhanging issue, which is properly defining Lagrange's mechanics working under forces of constraint. So let's take a break here.
Sure enough, we're taking a break. Okay, so here, pretty much end of the first lecture, give it a little bit of a gap. And then what I would do is basically make a cut just here and throw away the rest of the video, okay? And so just like you would do with film, where you'd actually just like celluloid film, take a razor and slice through the film, here there's a little razor tool, and what you can do at this cursor point is basically just cut the three tracks, go back to your cursor, and then just throw away the bits you don't want off the end, okay? And then same deal in here. I would basically just have transitions at the end just to clean up the exit from the video. So I will put exponential fade on the audio track. I will put cross dissolve on the three video tracks at the end. And so now if we just back up a few seconds, this is what the end of the video will look like. Done. Okay. All right. So at that point, I have an entire lecture ready to export. The front end's done nicely. The back end's done nicely. The audio engineering's done. Everything's aligned and it all behaves itself. Okay. And so at this point, I would just export that video out and I'm done for the day. I'll show you how to do that in a moment, but there's two things left I want to do. One, I want to show you how to sort of cut in the middle, and cutting in the middle is useful either because you want to remove an error and just stitch up the gap, or sometimes you actually want to stick things in there. So you'll notice in the snippets in part one, I basically had my usual arrangement on the screen of sort of notes, video and slides. And then I went to a video that occupied the whole screen for a little bit, just so I could get sort of full immersion in it, and then come back to this again. Okay, so I'll show you how to set that up, and then I'll show you how to do a voiceover, and then we'll finish. Okay, so let's just look for a suitable place to do this in this video, somewhere where there's a quiet patch. So just in here, right? So often if you're coming in and you're doing something like a video or something like that, you go, I'm going to show you this video now. You stop, have a bit of silence, and then start talking again, and know that later on you come in, you cut here, put your video, cut there, and go back into talking, okay? So this was not one where I actually did a video, but it's a convenient spot to use, so it's good enough here, okay? So let's zoom in, go just a tiny fraction after the sound stops, just so that you've got enough room to put transitions and stuff in, as we've talked about already. Run through with the razor, cut, cut, cut. Come through here, move forward to the bit just before you want to come back into talking again. Set up with the razor, cut, cut, cut. And then you can just remove this piece in the middle, which is kind of redundant just in here, okay? So if I want to slip video in here, I basically need to make a gap that's big enough that I can drop the video into that space, okay? So if I sort of zoom out so I can see a long time scale, I can basically grab these 3 tracks here, pull them back, and make a nice big space here. And then I can drop a video into that space. Okay, so let's drop a video in just here. Then what I can do is take the video and just butt it back up against it again. Okay, and if I was removing an error, I would just butt those 2 pieces up against each other. So let's just take this and butt that up against there, and we're good to go. Okay, this video is the right aspect ratio, so I don't need to adjust it any. I can zoom in a little bit in here, and again I might put transitions in, so just to show you how quick this is when you do it regularly. I just drop my cross dissolves into the video track in here, and then drop my exponential fade just into the audio track in here, like so. Okay, that's all good. And then if I zoom back out, I can come back to here, and we'll have a transition that goes from slide setup to video to slide setup that looks a little bit like this.
Change here. What do you want to do with your life? I want to go to UNSW and study physics. And then I want to rock. We're going to parameterize in a single.
Like so, okay? Fairly simple, just drop your video in, drop it out, do your transitions, away you go. And you probably have a little bit of a better discussion in, a bit of a better discussion out than what I set up just there, okay? So that's inserting video. Let me just very quickly show you how to do a voiceover in here. So I'm gonna switch to a different video, one that's a bit better to voice on. So let me just grab this sequence here and pull it back again, so I've got enough room. And what I'm gonna drop in is just my roller coaster video, which is a bit too long. So let's just zoom this in and pull these pieces back a bit further, so I've got some more room in here. Okay, does it fit now? Fits, good. Okay, so drop that in there against that, pick these pieces up, butt them up against the end, and so we've got our roller coaster track from the snippet that you saw earlier. And if I want to record a voiceover for that track, I probably want to get right up against the edge. So let's just zoom in so I can see it. Get right up against that edge where I'm about to come into the video here, okay? So the way you do voiceovers is using Audio 4, and it's this little button here with the microphone. So when you press that button, what it will do is it will go back a few seconds, it will count you in, and then record what you say on your microphone. And this is why you want the speaker off, because you don't want the sound coming on the microphone. So let's just click the button. As soon as you click the button, it will go. So let's just do this real quick. We'll record a voiceover now.
An implicit coordinate change here.
And so press stop, and now you'll notice that there's a little green bar down here that's basically got the sound that you recorded as your voiceover. So if we go back and play that, you'll hear both the audio track and the voiceover track. And so and you'll notice there's a little bit of a problem at the moment, which is that the voiceover track that I just recorded, you can't hear it amongst the clacking of the roller coaster and the screaming. So I want to show you one last piece in here, which is basically the internal audio mixer for Premiere Pro. And it's just at the very top of the screen under audio. What it will do is it'll bring up something that looks actually quite like a hardware mixer. Here are your 4 audio channels. And so if I go back to the early stages of this part in here, what I can do now is balance audio 1 versus audio 4 so that I can get the sounding right in here. Okay, so let's play it. So we're dropping down into this hill. This is a nice steep bit. So I can turn the audio from the clack and scream down. I can turn the voiceover up. And then I get a voiceover that's actually audible. Okay, so let's just play this. And so we're dropping down into this hill. This is a nice steep bit. Come through the bottom, up over the top, and then up onto the roof. Like so, okay? Fairly simple. So everything I do in here is basically just some mix of all the things that I've just shown you. Cutting the front, cutting the end, dropping things into the middle. Sometimes I do some more entertaining bits with a little bit more sort of just chop and change and bits and pieces, but there's nothing really too much more special than what I've shown you so far. The last piece of the puzzle is basically exporting what you've built. Okay, so let me just go back to effects so I know what the normal window structure looks like in here, because I always like to see it this way. You want to save your project at this point, because if something goes wrong, you don't want to have to come back and do it again. And so the last step here is to export. So if you go down to File, Export, Media, now you will have a little window pop up. Usually the only thing I change in here is the output name. All the other settings are pretty much correct. I've mucked around with some of them, but they don't matter too much. Usually it gets its defaults pretty right. Change the name on this. You just double click and open a window and set the name. The important thing down here is you actually have 2 options for how to export. There's export and queue. Export will do the encoding process inside Adobe Premiere Pro. So what that means is that Adobe Premiere Pro will lock itself up until it's finished doing that. If you have a short video, like you're making a little few-minute snippet, and it's going to process in a few minutes, that's not too bad. So you can just export it on the fly and it will drop the file out. If you've got something that's quite long, so for example, the videos I make are say 30 to 45 minutes long. There's 3 separate channels that have got to be incorporated together with both video and audio. So the processing for that takes something like about an hour and a half to 2 hours chugging away on the GPU. And if that locks up Adobe Premiere Pro for, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, you can't really do any other video processing with it. So usually what I prefer to do in that case is actually put them on a queue, because then you can run the encoder later on and you can just have everything going at the moment. So let me just show you what that queue and encoder looks like. So if you press the Q button, it will actually open a separate program called Adobe Media Encoder. Let's wait for that to pop up. Usually takes a couple of seconds. Like so. It will bring in the project, and then you'll see up here you have the file ready to go up here on the queue. Okay, and it's got an earlier video that I made and added to the queue earlier and forgot to remove. Okay, at the moment it's not doing anything. I can go back to Premiere Pro and do what I want. This is just sitting here. I can start encoding with the play button, and I can still use Premiere Pro in the background while it's doing the encoding. And basically what it will do is now take that stream, turn it into an MP4, and drop it into some specified location in your hard drive. For me, it's always the desktop. That final video, you basically just upload to YouTube, and I'm not going to go into that because most people know how to do YouTube uploads pretty easily. Okay, so that's the end of the whole process. It probably explains for those who emailed me about how this is done. why I gave a response of it's a bit more difficult than just a single piece of software. I have a feeling this video is going to end up being maybe a good hour long, explaining how this all works. There's quite an involved process, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually fairly quick. The recording process is going to be what it is anyway. You have to put the amount of time in. The setup is pretty quick once you get the hang of it. The processing takes probably a decent amount of time, but again, once you're used to just clipping all the pieces together, it's actually a fairly quick process to do. Especially if you're not inserting videos and stuff. All you're doing is just trimming off the front and back ends and pumping this out. So I think I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. And if you give it a try, fingers crossed, I hope it works for you as well. Cheers.
Hello, students. School has begun. The summer is over. I am in command. What was that? For that little outburst, each and every one of you will spend 3 hours in detention today, immediately after school, in the basement. What do you think you're doing? Twisted sister, what kind of a man desecrates a defenseless textbook? I've got a good mind to slap your fat face. You are destroying your life with that garbage. All right, Mr. Sister, I want you to tell me, no, better yet, stand up and tell the class. What do you want to do with your life?
I want to go to UNSW and study physics. And then I want to rock.